Thank you, Madam and Sir. I request Professor Ramani of IIITB to introduce our next speaker, Professor Kailath.
I'm going to give a very short introduction because we're very eager to listen to Professor Kailath. Starting from as a graduate of the University of Pune, the famous College of Engineering in Pune, he went on to MIT where he earned his master's and doctoral degrees and spent a year working at the Jet Propulsion Lab and then moved on to the Stanford University where he has been on the faculty since then. And at Stanford, he has mentored over 100 doctoral students and postdocs, and has served on a number of companies, has set up a company of his own, at least one that I know of. And he has been honored a number of times. I will be parochial and mention just two institutions. One of them being the IEEE, where he is a fellow and a winner of the Medal of Honor, and the Indian National Academy of Engineering, where he is a fellow. And he has been a recipient of the Guggenheim and Churchill Fellowships. So I think this is all I need to say. And I should add that his talk is going to be on mathematical engineering.
Along perhaps with Mahabala. And the reason he gathered was that I was 26 and he had got his letter was responded to, he was 31. So maybe the age made a difference. Now, to be honest, I mean, I had a position at MIT for me. Whether I would have taken the position at IIT, I can't say. But however, I did not have that opportunity, unlike Professor Mahabala. But just to round out my career, from MIT, at least in my day, MIT and Caltech were the two poles of the universe, technological universe. So since I'd gone to MIT, I thought I should go to Caltech. So I took leave from MIT and had an invitation to the Jet Propulsion Labs, which is a part of Caltech, where I taught. But those of you who have been in California, once you go to California, it's very hard to leave. So Stanford made me an offer I could not refuse, and I've been there ever since. Not that I mean anything pejorative, but Stanford in the 60s was not a very well-known school, actually. MIT and Berkeley were the leading schools. But again, to show you the power of individuals, Professor Fred Terman, whose book on radio engineering was basically our only textbook, was a person with great vision, and he's known as the father of Silicon Valley. And he built up university first and then Silicon Valley. He attracted Shockley, and Hewlett and Packard were his students and so on. So just to show the dynamism of it, I was appointed an associate professor at Stanford 1.5 years after my PhD, which means I was born in 63, so I was born in 35. So I was less than 28 when I was born. So that didn't make much difference to them. There was competition for me, I was lucky to say. So Terman, in fact, took the decision. So those were the kinds of risks that are needed to build institutions. Now, the other good fortune I had was that I'd always been interested in mathematics. And there was a famous professor in Bombay, Pesi Masani, who had worked with Norbert Wiener, who had tried to interest me in going to Elphinstone College at the time for mathematics. But of course, you talked about being hungry if you be an engineer. In those days, if you're a mathematician, you would be hungry too. So our family couldn't afford it. So I decided to stay in engineering. But Professor Iyer had encouraged me actually to learn on my own. I gave lectures on Boolean algebra and Laplace transforms to the students. And when I went to MIT, it was a wonderful time in history. Information theory had just recently appeared on the scene. And that is really the topic of my talk, is a new dimension in electrical engineering that largely arose in the late 50s. Yeah. Right. So, as I said, about 60 years ago, there came a conceptual shift in electrical engineering, which before then was largely based on the physics side of EE, devices and radios and so on. There was not a theory, mathematical theory, mostly a physical theory. And information, and became new disciplines such as information and communication theory, prediction and filtering, control, etc. And there were two works in the 40s which led to this revolution. Oh, I guess you can all see it on different screens. So, one was a monograph by Norbert Wiener, published in 42 but classified till 49, and then a paper by Claude Shannon of Bell Labs in 48, which was called at the time A Mathematical Theory of Communication. It was reissued as a book a year later, and this time it was called The Mathematical Theory of Communication. So what did they do? First of all, I must say the concept of mathematical engineering is not really a new one, but it gained currency in the last 50, 60 years. You might say Archimedes was the first mathematical engineer. He is well known for all his theorems, but you may know that he was a very good engineer too, and his city, Syracuse, was attacked by the Romans, and he helped defend it, so much so that when he would shoot projectiles across the ships and so on, the Roman army would shrink away, the fleet, when they saw these things emerging from the walls of Syracuse. Finally, of course, it was treachery that led to the surrender of Syracuse. And the story is that when the Romans invaded Syracuse, they found Archimedes drawing in the sand some mathematical theorems, and they asked him to go. He said, no, let me finish what I'm doing. Well, the soldier killed him against the orders of his superiors. So the name mathematical engineering didn't gain much currency, unlike, for example, the word mathematical physics. And Norbert Wiener wrote, for example, there's nothing better than concrete cases for the morale of a mathematician. And he said that from his own experience. And some of these are to be found in mathematical physics and the closely related mathematical engineering. The first mathematical electrical engineer, at least, was Oliver Heaviside, who was a remarkable character. He was born in Dickensian England, in one of the poorer towns there, Camden Town. Those of you who know the Christmas Carol, that's where that took place. But really depressing. He was educated, his mother ran a girls' school, so he was put into the girls' school and so on. And we went to work in his 20s in the telegraph company, but he suffered from deafness, so he couldn't work there long. But he began already to show his talents by working the telegraph company, coming up with an invention. Then one day in the library, he discovered Maxwell's book on electromagnetic theory. And it fascinated him. And he taught himself a lot of mathematics and made remarkable contributions to electrical engineering. I mean, the Laplace transform was due to him. Many other things, including the names like resistance, impedance, conductance, emittance, were all introduced by him, among many other things. There's a beautiful book about him. Oh, I see. Sorry. In an IEEE book by Paul Naheen, I thought I had the picture, called Sage in Solitude, which is well worth reading as just to show the power of individual drive and motivation. For many years, though, these ideas that Wiener and Shannon introduced were thought to be just theoretical ideas, too complicated to actually be used in practice. And we studied them, as they used to